safe investments, no crazy things. So this is our treasurer's report. That's it, Win, for the past year. And we have Carl Walters spent several hours with them. And so we have these long videotapes that we hope to integrate into a composite DVD that maybe, hopefully, we could get ready for the centennial, the last centennial portion. So that's what we want to do with it. And then maybe we would do a, anyway, that's, oh, stop filming.
County that we thought we were going to retire to. And as Door County got busier and busier, we didn't like it so much. And one day we got invited over to some friend's house in Mercer, and I had no idea, never been north of Wausau in my whole life. I think you had been though, hadn't you?
I fished.
Yeah. So we went to visit these people in Mercer, and that I said to him, I could retire up here without any problem at all. And I said I could sell the house in Door County and move up here anytime. So we started looking for property, and we of course wanted some privacy and a couple acres and a nice fishing lake. And she showed us probably 20 places. We drove her nuts, didn't we? We'd come up and look at 5 more and then go back to Milwaukee. And then one time she said, I know what you want, but you're going to have to go to Presque Isle to get it. And I said, Presque what? I had just learned about Mercer, never heard of Presque Isle. So we told her, she said it's about 25 miles away from Mercer. And we said, well, just, you tell us how to get there, we won't waste your time, we'll take a look at it. And so we came up Highway W and found this dirt road and followed it in for about 5 miles. And we fell in love with the place in Murphy Lake. And that's it. That's it. He retired and we moved up shortly after, right? Built a house. We moved up.
Thank you, Carol.
I feel like I've been here forever.
You're rooted.
I'm rooted.
We first brought up here in 1973. I live on Big Lake, which is half in Presque Isle and half in Boulder Junction, and I'm on the Boulder Junction end. But my next door neighbor, who's a couple blocks away, is in Presque Isle, so I guess I'm pretty close. My husband passed away 3 years ago. He was a realtor, and he belonged to a group of realtors called Wisconsin Exchange Club. And they used to meet and try to peddle large properties to trade for their clients. And the club wound up with a large property down near Stevens Point on a lake. It had been it was built in the 20s by some swindler. And he built this huge mansion on this lake, and he had like horse barns with air conditioning in the horse barns and all this stuff. Well, he got caught and went to jail. So the place was sold to an order of priests who made a boys camp out of it. And the boys slept in the barns with the air conditioning and everything. I don't know if the air conditioning still works. Well, I guess what goes around comes around. The priests got swindled out of all their money and had to sell it. So to make a long story short, they couldn't peddle this property, so they divided it up, and everybody had to buy a lot. We were in our 20s, and we could not afford to buy a lot. Didn't want a lot, etc., but we had to. So, of course, being realtors, immediately everybody started horse trading around with all these things. And somebody suggested to my husband and his brother that there was a place up in Boulder Junction that they might be interested in. So we came up in August of '73 and looked at a slice of the old Kego Lodge, which was a big resort up here. And had 100 feet of frontage, 2 ancient cabins, no well, because the well had been in a different part of the property, property. And we bought it and started there, and lots more things happened. One of the places burned down in 1980, so my brother-in-law moved to a different place. In 1985, we built a bigger house. In 1995, we moved 2 houses away to the site of the original lodge, which is where we are.
Back to the UP, and I'm still in Presque Isle. Everybody knows half Nelson.
I thought you lived here.
Yeah. But the reason why I did come for the 8-week logging job, there was 2 blow-down timbers in '87. The trees blew down one way, and then a storm came and twisted them the other way, and most of call them the measure stick loggers down in Wisconsin, they didn't want anything to do with that. It was dangerous, and you didn't get very much volume. You know, we went to everybody's yard and took their twisted timber down, you know. It was quite, quite messy, time consuming. But it was better than crawling out the top of the mountain in the UP to get in the swamp. Because most land was wet and the prices were down at that time. In fact, I had 3 semis hauling to Tomahawk from Presque Isle, and bottom line was $27.50 a cord. And that's all you got once it was delivered to Tomahawk, and it was all garbage wood. It's used for the interior of cardboard. The corrugation of the interior of cardboard, that's all the old papa would do.
Is that a full cord or a full cord?
Yeah, a full cord. $27.50, but that's delivered. You know, it's 68, just under 70 miles from here to Tomahawk too. It was actually the Owens, Illinois mill them days. Then Nakusa Packing took them over, and they're the packaging company of America now. A lot of those mills changed hands. But we tackled it, and pretty much all the way from Boulder all the way to the state line. We logged all over in there.
May we interrupt for some business? A nice log cabin, we lived in Madison, and it was called the, oh shucks, well anyway. We bought that cabin, and then from there, we built it up. We had 6 cottages and the main lodge. And my husband was a tool and die maker by trade, and it was wartime when we came up here. And he had had a nervous breakdown. So we came up here, we were just gonna stay for, we bought in the winter, but we were just wanted a place for fancy work. It was a little logging camp. And that's what I had to cook with for a few years. But anyway, we enjoyed it, and then Bob and Eileen took it over, and then that's kind of, they decided to do what they wanted with it.
Well, I came up here, actually I'll start at the very beginning. My grandfather, Ed Ziesness, was actually a horse thief. Stole horses from the Indians out in the Dakotas and brought them back for Teddy Roosevelt, and he trained the horses for Teddy Roosevelt's army. Then my grandfather later worked at the Crown Point Sheriff Department, and the year that Dillinger escaped, they turned him into an FBI agent and sent him up to Oxbow Lake after the notorious Ace Black, who was then Johnny O'Connor, the notorious killer. And my grandfather bought the cottage on Oxbow Lake to be in his FBI. So my grandfather came up here with his handcuffs and his guns and everything, which the DNR at that time did not have. So my grandfather supplied the DNR with their guns. And that was in 1948 I was born, and I married the boy next door. So even though I was born and raised in Crown Point, Indiana, this was my home. So, cool.
Situation, we stayed out on Highway K on the other side of Bloor Junction. So we went into a real estate dealer. We came up to visit some friends, and it was raining. So we went into the real estate dealer. John said, we'll look for a lot. We always thought we'd move up here. So they showed us some lots, and we didn't want a house. We wanted to build. He showed us 2 lots, and we bought one. That's all we looked at. And then after we got home and settled down, we found out the lot was in Presque Isle. Because the real estate dealer was in Boulder Junction, we assumed it was Boulder Junction. But we've never been sorry, because Presque Isle has had some good rules. It's the kind of a place we wanted to come. We're not going to drive 5 hours from Milwaukee and go to Minocqua. And so we were very happy we ended up in Presque Isle, even though we didn't know we were going to do it.
Where is that? Where did you
We're on Highway D&M on Wildcat Lake. And also, we have a lady on the lake that has written a history of Wildcat Lake. And really, you should have one of her books. It isn't,
We'd like one. I'll look into it.
Wildcat Lake.
Who is that, Betty? Who wrote it?
Helen Nordland.
Just off of M&B.
Helen Norman?
Yeah,
She did a lot of research.
we enter our property from B. Funny part about coming up here, we visited up here, stayed out on Highway K at end of Wind for many, many years. And, but that was just for a short stay, like a week or two. And Betty said at that time, she said, I just don't like the North Woods. She said, I think it's so dull. Because she's an awful reader and she's a great one about information about stage plays. And so her idea of a good time was go to New York with her mother and see plays. And they go on these tours for different plays in New York. Well, then our two children started going to Camp Manitowish. And that's when we got really interested in the Wind over on Highway K. And I was always a great one for the outdoors. I'm not a hunter, I'm not a fisherman, but I enjoy the outdoors. And I couldn't see, Betty's from a little small town out in the western part of the state called Dodgeville. And I'm from Milwaukee, and her family, my family, were friends in Dodgeville. And they moved to Milwaukee. They got pictures of Betty and myself when I would say about 7, and Betty was about 4 maybe at the oldest. We have those pictures that my parents took, those old-fashioned cameras. And so we had those framed, and they're in the house. Fortunately, for me, her father lost his job with the company he was with and found a job in Milwaukee. So the family moved to Milwaukee. And that's when the excitement began. Betty was she was a junior in high school at the time. My mother and father said, my brother and myself were 14 months apart, one of you boys have to take that Lewis girl out on a date. You just can't let them be here in Milwaukee. I said, Ma, I'm not taking anybody out on a date. You say we should be taken out. So my kid brother, 14 months younger, said, well, I'm not taking her out. And so my mother said, we're going to draw straws.
Great.
Guess what? My brother lost, and he had a dater. So I talked to him afterwards, and he says, there's no warmth there. I just can't see why Mom wants us to do this. So my mother said, it's your turn.
That's okay, he lost his dog, and after he lost his dog, then I took the dog's place.
So, we courted for 2 years and married in 1940. And we had 2 children, and right after we had the second child, I was off to the Marine Corps and stationed down in Presque Island, Quantico, Virginia, and one other place. And I had her come down with the 2 children.
Stuff that you don't have in other places. So we don't want it to grow too fast.
Got pretty much the same. It's funny being on a lake that's in 2 different towns.
Yeah.
Because the laws don't really apply. They have to agree, or they don't mean anything.
No, we just, after we got up here, we realized, how nice Presque Isle was, even though we never came that far north.
Yeah, I spent my summers up in Hayward when I was, my grandpa